All right, I think we have close to a full house, so I'm going to go ahead and launch into it. So we are so excited to have you all join us today for our alumni experience panel. A big thank you to our 4 alumni. They've had such diverse and immersive experiences with ISEP, and they're really looking forward to sharing them with you, and I can't wait to hear. Before I get into introducing our panelists and jumping into some questions, I'm going to turn it over to our Student Services Officer, Heather Schloss, to go over what ISEP is as an organization and give you some more info.
Perfect. Thank you, Rory. As she mentioned, my name is Heather Schloss, and I am the Student Services Officer. And I personally work with UK and Oceania, but I'm part of our Student Services team, and I'm happy that you all are here to join us today. For those of you who may not know, ISEP is a nonprofit organization, and we have a network of universities all around the world, and we aim to provide accessible and affordable programs for all of our students. And our programs really do focus on intercultural engagement for students in order to help you get the most out of each of your experiences abroad. So we can just go on and dive into how it works. So for our programs, ISEP does offer semester, full year, and summer programs. And like I said, we have a network of universities all around the world, which includes over 300 universities in over 50 countries. We do have 2 main types of programs, ISEP Direct and ISEP Exchange. On ISEP Direct programs, students will pay a preset fee directly to ISEP, and these programs often have a little bit more flexible housing and meal arrangements. On ISEP Direct programs, you are also guaranteed placement on that direct program as long as you are academically eligible. So it's a great option if you want to know exactly where you're going when you apply. On the other hand, the second type of program is ISEP Exchange. And for these programs, students will pay the cost of tuition, meals, and housing to your home university. For your application, you will list up to 10 exchange programs per term that you are interested and willing to attend. These placements will be dependent on exchange space available, so we can't necessarily guarantee your placement on a particular program, but you will be able to list several that you're interested in, and we'll find a program that really meets your needs. Now, when it comes to health and safety, I'm sure that this is a concern that's top of mind for a lot of you students, especially with regards to COVID-19. And I do want to assure you that all students do receive a student health insurance, as well as 24/7 emergency services and assistance from your student services officer. In addition, there are usually on-site facilities and support services available to you while on your program. And many of our sites will also have the option for single occupancy housing if that is preferred for you. In the event that your program is canceled because of COVID-19, we do have several policies in place to protect you and to give you options for your application and your program. If you want to review these policies in detail, I'm dropping the link to our website where you can read more about these, but you can also let your student services officer know if you have any specific questions. Now, how do you apply to this program? The first way to start is to create an account at isep.org. You can do that at www.isep.org/apply. Once you create an account, you'll be put in contact with one of our student services officer that advises on the region of interest. So your student services officer can discuss your goals for your program and any academic needs that you may have, and then we'll be able to suggest programs that best meet those needs. Your SSO will also be your contact for the application process if you have any questions or concerns as well. So without further ado, I will pass it back off to Rory and our wonderful panelists to discuss their programs.
Thank you, Heather. So as Heather said, I'd like to now introduce our 4 lovely panelists. We have Ashley, a recent California San Marcos alum who studied abroad at Korea University in Seoul. We have Antonio from Milan, Italy, who studied abroad at Nebraska, Omaha in the US. And we have Ray from Georgia, who studied abroad at University of Oulu in Finland, and Cuban from the UK, who studied abroad and is currently studying abroad at University of San Marcos in the US in California. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. You are the main event, and I know we just can't wait to jump in, and the students tuning in are excited to hear about your experiences. So I asked each of the panelists to bring a photo as well as a story from their time abroad. So I'm going to hand it over to them now to tell you a little bit more about their experiences, and then we'll get into some more general questions about study abroad. Ashley, are you able to share?
Yeah, so like Rory said, I went to Korea University in Seoul. I went with ISEP exchange for a year-long program. And I have to say, I didn't just stay in Seoul. I got to travel around a little bit. I took as many cultural trips as I could, one of which these photos are from. I took a 2-day, 1-night trip to the southernmost tip of Korea, where I got to do a temple stay, which is the picture up in the top right, where they taught us how to pray and how to meditate, and they led us through yoga stretches, which were a lot harder than any yoga I had done before, because it's also about connecting with yourself and the spirits in Korea. And it was a really great experience. And then we also got to go to a flower festival, which is the photo on the left. And then I'm not sure if a lot of people know, but it's a gochujang village, and gochujang is a traditional red spicy Korean pepper paste. And that's the bottom right photo, where they have these just giant containers that they just ferment this paste in for years and years and years. And they taught us how to make it by hand in this village, and they cooked us a meal. So we got to not only have a culinary experience, but also learn how to cook some of the food, which was really incredible. And I think it was an opportunity that I got to have to connect with the culture in a deeper way than I could living in the city. And outside of that, we had cultural trips with our Cuba buddies at Korea University. And our Cuba buddies were Korea University students, local students who we got paired up with. And they took us out to lunch, they took us on small trips, and they were also our support system if we ever needed any help. And I know that was a great resource for me as someone who didn't really know Korean and didn't really know my way around. And I was really grateful for that experience and the hand-holding that happened every so often. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ashley. You really seized every moment, and I just love hearing you describe all of the wonderful cultural learning that you did while you were there. And next, I'm going to ask Antonio to share a little bit about his experience at Nebraska Omaha.
So hi guys, hi everyone. So I would like to share this kind of two picture, and also will start to say that I applied for Horizon program because it was my dream to study in United States. So it was a different experience with different culture, and we can see on the left all the culture, all the people from around the world. So when I arrived to Nebraska, it was incredible. It was also, the culture shock, because when you arrive there, you can see all the people from Mexico or Japan or South Korea, and that people, they become your family actually, because I was there alone actually, but step by step. I mean, at the beginning it would be hard, but at the end it will become your family, and you can do experience. For example, I traveled from the East Coast, from the West. It was incredible. I mean, the US is an amazing country. And also the another picture is I like to share with you. It's like the method in United States, or maybe in other countries, completely different. For example, in Europe, in Italy, it was it's a little bit more theoretical things. It's but in US, with my professor, was more practical. My major, for example, was in economics, and my minor was in public health. And this professor, for example, teach us how works the healthcare in the United States. She took study in a refugee campus, and they permit to us to explain what we do in a class in the refugee campus. So it was amazing because we can put in real life what we learn in the classroom. So it was a really also professional growth, and it was a really incredible experience. This.
Thank you so much, Antonio. I think one thing that like really struck me is like how you talked about the international students becoming like family. And I think that's so true. Like in an international, when you study abroad, they really do become family. And it was clear through all of your photos what amazing friendships you really formed. So definitely, I would encourage you all to go on our Instagram, ISEP Study Abroad, and also look through more of Antonio's photos too from his travels. But thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you too.
And then next we have Ray going to share a little bit about their experience at University of Oulu in Finland.
Hi, so like Roy said, my name's Ray. I studied at the University of Oulu back in, oh gosh, it was the fall semester of 2018, which is crazy to say that. But I went with ISEP Exchange because I was a senior at the time. It was my first semester as a senior for my undergrad. And studying anthropology and geography, my home university's requirements were pretty strict in terms of like what classes I needed to take in order to graduate, but I really wanted the experience to go abroad. So ISEP Exchange gave me a lot of opportunity and like width in terms of being able to find substitute classes. And Finland was, it wasn't my original thought, but because of the amazing classes they offered specifically for their Indigenous studies and their sustainability courses is why I ended up choosing Finland, because that's usually the first question people ask me, like, why Finland of all places? And this little guy right here is a reindeer that honestly, up until I saw them for the first time, I wasn't convinced that they were real animals. I was like, that is a Santa Claus thing. I don't think they're actually real. But for one of my classes, my sustainability class, we ended up traveling to Panuma, which it's like an hour north of where Oulu is. And we got to go to a reindeer farm to learn about, because reindeer, they're like Finland's version of like cattle. They're like a staple for food, and it's like a huge part of their culture. So we got to feed the reindeer lichin, and we got to pet them, and we just got to see different herding techniques. And my little anecdote, I was at one point, we went into the like meat storage shed that they have because reindeer are a huge food staple, and we walked in, we were looking, it's so cool, and one of the reindeer just walked in right with us, and I remember the farmer just like patting the reindeer on the head and like shooing him out and laughing and be like, it's not your time yet, buddy. And it was just like I remember all of us just being like laughing but in shock at the same time, because we were just like, we had like bonded with these animals. But it was such a wonderful experience, and I would really do anything to be able to go back. I still talk to all of my friends that I made on exchange. I lived in the apartment complex I lived in was all of the international students that were going to Oulu, so we were able to like all bond, and we were all somehow in similar classes. So a lot of my friends that I went on this trip with, I still talk to.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love hearing that story. And I think one thing that's really neat too is sometimes you might, a lot of students, their mind goes to certain more popular, like very popular destinations within Europe, but it just goes to show that you can have like a really unique experience and get to know a country and a culture that you maybe wasn't really on your radar. And I love that because our network is so large and we have over 300 member universities, really the whole world is open to you. And thank you so much for sharing, Ray. And then I'm going to pass it on now to Cuban to tell us a little bit about his experience.
Yeah, so currently I'm studying in California, and I went with ISEP Direct. And one of my greatest experience that I've gotten to do, while studying in California, is going kayaking. This was actually last week, with my friends Tyler, Mikey, and Pete, which I had met for my game development class. I'd taken the previous semester. None of us had ever kayaked before, so we didn't know at all what we was doing. But it was a great way to get some exercise and some sun at the same time. Whilst kayaking the ocean, it was very hard to like steer the kayak at first, but we got used to it after like the first hour. Although my friends Pete and Tyler somehow managed to flip their kayak, and he lost his shirt into the ocean. Um, and he actually had to go buy all brand new clothes from a beach vendor because they wouldn't let us into restaurants and stuff because he had no shirt. But after a long day of kayaking, we went and got some pho, which is like a Vietnamese soup similar to ramen, and it was really tasty. And the whole experience was like amazing that day. And I'm glad I'm currently experiencing being in California.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're getting to do these outdoor excursions, it's such a quintessential, like it's such a must when you live in when you're living in a state like California. And I know that that's what attracts a lot of students to coming to the US is just the geographic diversity and all of the different sports and nature and trekking that you can explore. So I'm really glad you got to share that because I know we probably have students curious to do similar things when they are abroad in the US. So with that, you all did such a great job of answering and kind of working in why you chose ISEP a little bit when you were explaining your anecdote. So I'm going to move on to a question I actually have for you, Cuban, about how you connected and made friends with local students while you were abroad and what that was like, especially now that you are studying abroad during COVID. I think it's really great for students to hear how you went about that.
Mm-hmm. So before I actually joined the university, I looked for the university Discord, and I actually played a lot of video games and stuff with current students studying at the university. So that allowed for me to already have friends, with current students before I even actually arrived at the university. Another great way, though, is I met students through extracurricular activities such as the CPP program, which is the Conversation Partner Program. This program, it basically connected foreign students with a current, native local student, and you discuss with them once a week and do projects and stuff, which is really fun. I'm also, doing a host family experience at the moment, which is really, really fun. Like, it's really cool because it gives me an experience of like trying, proper home cooked meals rather than going to restaurants and whatnot. And a tip I would say for future students would be never be scared to try new things. Just just go for it. You might make a new friend whilst trying something new. And with COVID and whatnot, I would say it does make stuff a little bit more difficult, but it's not too hard. Like it's very it's still fun. Like I'm like having the time of my life. Huh?
I'm really glad you said that because I did get a question about how you're kind of adapting to COVID during this. So it's seeming like you found ways of meeting people despite the kind of social distancing, and being in a home safe situation has allowed you to also still be, it seems like you're quite often surrounded by people and not really, isolated in that way. Which is great to hear. And then how are you finding like classes right now, Cuban? I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't figure out what the mute button was. But no, I'd say the classes are a little bit strange, being online and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, it's just the same, I'd say, in my opinion. Like, it's just a different environment, but it's still, the same classes and the same teachings and whatnot.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's see. Are there any other ones that we should stop and answer now? I'm going to keep moving on, and I actually have a question for Antonio. And this is a big question, but I'm curious. Now that you've had a chance to reflect back on your time abroad, how do you feel like it has impacted your worldview and who you are today?
So actually, so before then I move on to this kind of question, I want to really recommend to all the people that are watching us to really do this kind of experience, because just now will be happening. I mean, it's like after the university, after the bachelor or the master, it's something that you cannot apply for the ISEP, so just now, because it will be an amazing experience. So regarding for the question, I would say so for academic professional things, especially for, to get a job after the experience, it would be also for me now, for example, I'm from Italy, but now I'm in Malta in summer camp to do my internship. And, for the professional career would be very, very useful because, you can show, or the international institution or enterprise that you, well, the ability to stay in another country and manage another language, because as I told you before, I'm the only one that I'm not native speaker. So it's like, sometimes for us, it would be kind of a barrier to speak, but I mean, it's just the first time, but then, but the most important things, it's like the personal growth. So it's like when I was in US, so when I went to US, it was extraordinary for me because I was able to understand that it doesn't just exist my culture. There are a lot of culture around the world. So it's like that I will become more open-minded. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like that you can understand other people from different countries. So that's something that permit to me to see the world in a different way, because sometimes when you stay in just one place, you think that it just works in one way, but it doesn't actually. So there is a lot of way to live the life or approach or have an approach or your life actually.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like not only are you able to take these this greater cultural understanding to the job you're doing now, you also have very comfortable communicating in English. And so are you using those skills at the work you're doing now?
Yeah, of course. I mean, actually, nowadays, the English as a language is used for everywhere around the world. So, it's a kind of language that you can use for communicating with other people around the world, and it's very useful, and especially for the career, but also for maintain the friendship with other people that I met. That I met in Nebraska, for example, and I still with them to talk about international affairs or business, or just to have a talk. And that's incredible it is. And I want to just say that before we went to Nebraska, I retake the English exam 5 times in Italy, but I don't know what happened after, but I would really recommend it, because for me it was amazing, these kind of things, but I really recommend it, just do it. So it's a very amazing experience actually.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. And I think it's so important what you said, because with ISEP, you don't only meet local students, you also meet international students. And so you were speaking English. English was also that bridge between you and these international students that you were meeting. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Tony, I did want to ask you briefly too, because you say you traveled a lot across the US. So do you have any quick travel recommendations for anyone? Because I know a lot of international students want to do the American cross-country trip.
So I don't want to be a part. It's like, when I was a child, I always dreamed to live a kind of American life actually. And, for me, for example, I want to also this, for my first choice when I applied for ISEP was in the University of San Marco in California, actually, my first choice. But at the end was Nebraska. And at the beginning I say, okay, I mean, I don't know where is Nebraska, but I will go there. And at the end was my favorite state is actually, but because, when you stay there, you can, know people, these kind of things. But for the travel, just for reply for questions. So I've been in New York. New York was, I mean, New York is New York. It's incredible. It is actually, but also San Francisco was great. Also Toronto was great, because we have to say with the ISEP, if I remember well, you can travel also in Mexico and in Canada actually. I mean, I was in Nebraska. I was in the middle of the United States. And for me, it was very useful to have a trip there. And and I also recommend, because in the middle, because there were if I remember, the Thanksgiving break, and we took a car, and we travel all in the south of America. We travel until Nevada, if I remember well. I was also in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, or Washington. It's like, a lot of trip actually.
I love that
But-
you bring that up, because sometimes I think we think maybe the US isn't so easy to navigate, but you did find a way of using your breaks to see a lot of the US.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know what, because also the University of Nebraska, I don't know the other university, but of course they did. They help us to have this kind of things. So for example, if you go in on the office, international office, and you ask everything you want, they were so nice. Go there, or maybe go in California, Santiago. Yeah, it was a great. I mean, I love Americans and I love United States. So I really recommend United States actually.
Thank you so much, Antonio. That's wonderful to hear. I'm glad the office
You're
too was
welcome.
helpful. Ashley, I want to ask you the same question I asked Antonio about reflecting back on your time. How do you feel like it's impacted your worldview and who you are today?
So I know there's two things, one of which Antonio kind of touched on a little bit, is the whole career thing. Because I'm a recent graduate, I've been trying to find a job, and it's a tough market to get into, especially with how things are right now. But I know having study abroad on there made me stand out on a lot of resumes, and I actually just landed a really great job. And one of the things they asked about was studying abroad and the cultural experience, and me having communicated between multiple different cultures because of all the different students from all around the world that I met. They were like, well, that's a great experience, and that's what we're looking for. And so I know that made me way more marketable. And then personally, before I went to Korea, I was really introverted. I had a hard time putting myself out there and meeting new people. But when you force yourself out of your comfort zone, you have to like get out there and so that you have a support system. You have to put yourself out there to try to gather around your friends. And I know it's made me more outgoing. I'm a lot more proactive at looking for opportunities and actually taking them instead of just looking at them. And kind of like this is not something I would have done sitting here and talking to people before I went to Korea. So I definitely grew in leaps and bounds in that way.
Oh, I love hearing that. I know, having studied abroad twice myself, like it does amazing things for self-confidence. It makes you feel like after studying abroad, you can talk to anyone because you had to use such cross-cultural communication skills and nonverbal communication. And I love what you said about it helping with jobs, because I think study abroad does set students apart when someone sees that you've had that experience, and it can be a great conversation starter when you're talking in interviews and answering questions about how did you adapt? How did you respond to a challenging situation? You can really pull from your study abroad experience. So thank you so much for sharing, Ashley. So I want to talk to Ray now, and this kind of segues nicely into my next question. Ray, I'm curious, what was one of the biggest challenges you encountered during study abroad, and how did you overcome it?
There are definitely ups and downs to studying abroad. I actually had a little blog that I used while I was abroad to just kind of give people back home a nice scope of like, it's not all rainbows and sunshine all the time. It's wonderful, but like, it's still life. It's still difficult. I think one of the hardest things was adjusting how I approached social situations, because it's not something that I really had to think about back home. I didn't have to think about like me saying y'all. I'm from Georgia. I'm from the South. Like that's just something normal, and having to adjust the volume and the slang that I use to speak to people in order to be like easier to translate and communicate was something that it was a frustration I wasn't expecting to have. It ended up becoming a little game actually with a lot of my friends, a lot of my international friends who had English as a second language. They would quiz me on my English grammar, be like, you don't say this correctly. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is just how I normally say it. So a language barrier was definitely one of my challenges. But also just overall adjusting to the weather. That was something I wasn't, because I went to Finland in like fall and winter. So I was used to, being in Georgia, I'm used to a very even adjustment of the climate. Like we have 3 months of summer, 3 months of spring, winter, so on. But when I was there, it got to the point where I'd only have 2 hours of sunlight a day. and having to adjust to that and mentally to the different like cultural accommodations that they had at the university. Like they had light rooms to help like fight depression for students who were like really struggling. Because I took for granted, not for granted, but it was something I didn't have to think about back home, was like, oh, if I'm struggling, I just go to the mental health services and the person speaks the same language as me and it's fine. But making sure that I was taking the correct precautions and everything for myself, for my mental health while I was there, as well as dressing correctly. Because I was like expecting, the only winters I'd ever experienced were what I was used to here. So I was like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. But -23 is very different than our current 50 that we have right now in Georgia. It's very different.
Yeah.
So really just like adjusting to the different the different changes in terms of like climate and communication. There was a lot of different things that it's like tiny shifts, a bunch of little tiny shifts that add up to like one big shift in the way you engage with the world.
I think I'm really happy you brought that up, because I think self-care is really important, and for students to know, because of course, in hindsight, we talk about these experiences and we just know how much value we got from them, and just we overcame all these things. But I think it is important for students, on this call listening, to hear that, there are going to be just lots of little adjustments that can feel like a lot, and to kind of slow down and to check in with yourself to make those adjustments. And I think like you come out of it and you're like kind of better at adulting after studying abroad. Like you become a better adult, and it's something that I think we constantly have to remind ourselves how to adult and care for ourselves, especially during these times. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I've been told we have lots of questions from our audience. So Rachel, who is on this call, my colleague, I'm going to look at the questions myself, but I'm also going to
I can hop in on a few of them.
Yes.
One of the first ones is a really common one for all of our panelists really quickly. How do you pack your entire life into one suitcase? I think it's actually two that you're allowed, but into two suitcases. Are there any specific things that you would absolutely advise to carry with you before leaving your home country?
Good question. Anyone feel free to jump in on this one.
I would say first and foremost, a converter for your electronics, because you like not even just one, because you think like, oh, one for my phone. It's like, well, you probably have your laptop. You probably like have like other just like little knickknacks and stuff that you like need to charge. Like make sure you have extra ones, because if you're anything like me, I lost mine at one point. So absolutely have that. And comfort items, like something that like, just even if it's just like a month's worth of your favorite tea, because it's just like something comforting that you can have, that like when you're feeling that like wave of like homesickness, just like something really simple that like will cheer you up, that you wouldn't necessarily easily find while you're just like at a store, wherever you are.
A piece of home. That's a great one. Great point.
Just one thing, if I can recommend it, before that you have a trip to go to a country for a semester, just check all the weather and the temperature over there, because for example in Nebraska it was a little bit, more so cold it was. And I bought everything there actually, because the material that they use for make a jacket is completely different than the material that we have in Italy. So do your stuff, your luggage, but actually some specific stuff just by there.
That's a good point.
Yeah, also the charger, of course. When I was there, the only thing that I have to buy was the jacket and the charger, but that's it.
Yeah, so knowing what's going to be easy to get there, and what is going to what you can get there that might be even better than what you can bring from home. Like certain things like toothpaste and shampoo you probably can find there. There's certain things that you might not need to bring from home, but those are great points. Definitely the charger situation, that's a huge one. What else, Rachel? Do we have any other
Yeah,
ones?
we have so many questions here, so I'm going to try to get through a lot of these. One for Ashley in particular. Ashley, one of our students wants to know, how did you navigate your limited language skills when interacting with local students? And how did you prepare yourself culturally and personally before going to Korea?
I would say I was quite lucky when it came to language skills with fellow students. All of my classes were in English, so most of the students I interacted with spoke in English as well. But I think the hardest part language-wise was going to the grocery store, ordering my groceries, asking questions, and ordering food, because even though I'm in Seoul, which has a pretty high rate of people speaking English, a lot of these restaurants are ran by like older people who don't speak English at all. When you're trying to order specifics, it's quite difficult. But something that helped me was when I was with my Cuba buddies, I would sit next to a Korean student and listen and watch them order. And I was like, those are the words. Let me like take note of that, or even write it down. Don't be afraid to like have a little notebook and write things down. It may seem silly, but it'll become a really precious resource for you to have like just something written that you could reference. And after a while, you won't need that reference anymore. And so I kind of just took note of people around me. If I was in line at a grocery store, it seems rude to eavesdrop, but when you're in a situation where you don't know the language, it's okay to listen to how the person in front of you is checking out. What do they say? What are they asking? And I think people underestimate how well you adapt, because after a while you kind of pick up like, oh, I may not know all the words, but I understand the context and I can use some of those words myself. So I know that was really helpful language-wise. And then culturally, I will admit, I loved South Korean culture before I left. I watched a lot of TV shows. I listened to a lot of the music. So I kind of already had an idea of what I was getting myself into. But I definitely would say like, choose one grocery store to go to a lot if you like cooking for yourself like I did. And you'll build a relationship with the people around you that way, because they'll see you out frequently and then they'll be like, oh, Ashley, like, hi. Well, in Korean, they'll be like, oh, 안녕하세요, Ashley. And I'm like, oh, hi, like, how are you? And they are more willing, if you're kind and try to speak their language a little bit, they'll try to meet you and it'll help your skills build up a lot. Yeah.
Such good tips, Ashley. That's great.
Yeah. We're going to open it up a little bit more to the rest of you as well. We got a more general language question about, except for you, Cuban, who you're taking classes in your native language. But for anybody who took classes not in their native language, how did you find that? Was it more difficult than you thought it would be?
It is definitely, you pick up things faster than you think you are. For me, my classes were in English, but all of the signs, all the information online was in Finnish, and most of my professors emailed me in Finnish. So even if you don't necessarily understand the word itself, you're gonna, like Ashley said, you're gonna catch on to that one word and just like hook on into it and be like, oh, I hear Ewha a lot, and I'm like, okay, that means good. So I'm gonna hook onto that and hold on to that. Or I hear like Hominta a lot. Okay, I'm gonna hook onto that. And I joined like a little band that the university had while I was there, and they conducted and spoke entirely in Finnish. But I was able to just relying off of your classmates and just being like, hey, can you explain that to me real quick? They're going to be a lot more accommodating than you think they are. Just because like, if the same thing, if like you've ever interacted with an international student at your school, I doubt you've been like cruel to them about their language barrier. And if your class is being taught entirely in that other language and you're like really scared about it, see if they have options specifically in your language or in something that's more adaptable, because they did for me. Oulu has a lot of international students, so they have certain classes that are taught specifically in English or have like English online alternatives, so that you're able to still get the content in a way that you're going to understand.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to ask. That's really important. Thanks, Ray.
All right, we've got, these questions are coming in really fast, so we're gonna keep going.
Great.
This is great. You guys are doing such a great job of asking fantastic questions. Ray, well, I've got you. I'm gonna keep you unmuted for a second. We've got several Ray-specific questions. The first one is, what were your expectations before the trip, and how did those expectations match with your actual experience? And now that you're 2 years out from your experience, what do you feel like you still carry with you?
Oh gosh. Oh, okay. I think I went in with the expectation of being able to be like, oh, I've got this. Like, this is going to be an easy thing for me to transition to. I'm an extrovert. I get along with everybody. And then like realizing that, because I saw one of the questions in there was about like how if I clash with the Finnish culture.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I'm a loud person, because this is just like how Americans are, is like, we are just like culturally, we are loud. And going into Finland and just being like, hi, I love you immediately to everybody. And they're all very like, no, like, hold on. Like, they're just like introverted as a culture. And I was like having to adjust my perspective of myself and having to be so self-aware all the time. That was an expectation I wasn't expecting to have, was like how just self-conscious and aware I was of everything I was doing all the time. Because it can be kind of embarrassing being like, oh, I look a lot like a tourist right now when I'm trying to like really integrate into this culture. And being 2 years out of my program, I miss it so much. And having my undergrad is in anthropology and in geography. So I was studying culture already. I was focusing on cultural anthropology. And that's why I went there, because I wanted to have a more immersive understanding of not only Finnish culture, but everyone else that I was interacting with. And I went in thinking that I was like culturally aware. And now 2 years out, I'm still learning like how to be more woke about other people and their experiences, even if like it seems like it's going to be really similar. Our cultures are, the tiny minute things make a difference. And I find myself still trying to actively educate myself on different cultures, even in my own culture itself, with America being so expansive and broad. Like, I live in Atlanta. Atlanta has Hartsfield-Jackson, the largest international airport in the world. Like, we have a lot of people from a lot of different cultures. And I think that my exchange program has taught me to just be more conscious and considerate and patient and understanding, and has taught me to give a lot more room and space for other people. And I think if I were to change how my experience went, I would have gone in with less expectation and more just like an open arm approach, being like, I want this, that, and the other thing out of my program. You're going to get all of this instead. So just make sure that you're giving yourself and everyone else space to exist while you're in your program and post, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that answer. This is kind of a related question for everybody. I love this question. What social mindset should one have when arriving at a place where you know you'll only live for a few months?
Interesting. That's a great question.
I could grab this one. I think maybe changing the wording of how you think about it is a good start. Instead of thinking about, I'm only going to be with these people for a couple months, be like, don't count it down, because then internally, whether you know it or not, you start thinking about it as, well, I'm not going to be with these people for long, so I shouldn't put an effort into making these connections. Instead, you should be like, I have this much time to take to really grab onto whatever opportunity I can to create these bonds, because what you may not know, and obviously all of us have talked about how we have lasting friendships and we still talk to people. So it may only be a few months, but some of these friendships that you make may last years and years outside of your program. And so I would look at it more as an opportunity to really put yourself out there to have the best time with these people, because you never know who you're going to come across and how quickly you could spark a really deep and wonderful relationship, whether it be friends or maybe a significant other, who knows.
It's happened.
Oh, just one thing, see if I can
Yeah.
say something about that. So just, I also gonna say that, what happened in exchange programs, still in exchange program, it's like, you stay with that people, it's like you can have fun, you can, have a great friendship, also relationship. It's dependent. I know a lot of people that have a relationship actually. And just be a really it's like you have to be respectful with other people, but you can do whatever you want. And actually, for reply also the question before, for example, for European, and also for Europeans, but also for all the Asians ones, all the other continent actually. For us, I also imagined US. It's like a series TV, because all the movies that we watched, they talk about the college, and what happened in the college. And this was my expectation, but at the end, it was real. I mean, when I was in Nebraska, it seems like that I live my semester in a series TV. I mean, a series TV. It was incredible. It was actually. I mean, it's also with the, when you have to make friends, just be very relaxing. Don't be shy. Don't be scared. I mean, there are people like you over there. I mean, as you are alone there, also other people are alone. There is none. It's very, we have to also to say that it's very rare that, unique when, two people, they know each other. It's like a friends go to the exchange program. Usually all the people going exchange alone. So they're on alone like you. So it's very easy to make friends actually.
Great. And then we had a US specific question for both you, Antonio, and you, Cuban. Are there any things that you think that a student who's interested in coming to the United States should not miss? Something that you would consider to be an amazing experience about studying in the United States?
For me personally, I think like the food, for example, because in the States, yeah, it's a bunch of like cultures like mashed together kind of thing. So you can get food from like all over the world, from like just like outside your door kind of thing. And I'd say definitely participate in all like the holidays the States have, like like 4th of July and Thanksgiving if you can.
Yeah, I'm completely agree with Cuban actually. So it's like, I don't know. I can explain. It's actually in that place you can find everything you want. Actually, I mean, also in Omaha, it's like it's a very small city, but there was everything. I was impressed actually. It's like Walmart or the Asian market or everything. The Mexico one. It's like, also for the fast food or also for the club actually. Also the university, it was really extraordinary for me because they have the club for reading or for LGBT stuff or another things actually. So it's something really I can't explain. There was everything. I mean, also if you have a passion, for example, for military stuff or these kind of things, there is there. It's unbelievable, but there is everything there. It was incredible.
We had another question for all of you about how difficult was it to find and register for your classes once you were there?
I will start maybe a little bit. For example, it's depend. I don't know another guys, but it depends by your country and by university because you have to match the exam. I mean, it's not that hard, but you have to, it's like you have to thinking about that. It's like I can say 6 months later than before your trip, because you have to make exactly with your university which kind of exam you have to do in another country. Because I also will say when I did my exchange, I was in a master degree in Italy, but I took, if I remember well, 1 or 2 classes in the bachelor degree. So you have to match and check in the bachelor and the master degree your exams actually. So I really recommend it because at the beginning I also checked in the master degree, but then they asked it permit to us. I don't know, is ISEP or University of Nebraska, but permit to me to take the class in the bachelor degree. So it's dependent by university.
For Ashley or Ray, how hard was it for you to enroll in your classes? What was that process like?
Mine was a little bit more, it was a little complicated because we went in having a list. We were supposed to have a list of 10 classes that we had to get approved from. This is at least how my university did it, because I did ISEP exchange specifically. I had a list of 10 classes that I had to get approved from my home university, and a list of 10 classes from Oulu that were supposed to be equivalent exchanges. And I had to have at least 10 or 12. And when I went there, I realized that only 3 of those classes were even being offered that semester entirely, even though it had said differently online, just how things work. So I had to do like a rapid exchange of like finding a Finnish advisor and being like, I'm an exchange student and the classes I had like pre-registered for aren't being offered. And so I just had to, I feel like that's like the main theme is like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Because I ended up being able to like speed fast through the process of getting those other classes approved. And I ended up taking 6 classes and it was totally fine. I got it sorted out really quickly. My ISEP advisor and my advisor back home were really wonderful and amazing about like making sure I got there, because you're not going to be abandoned the second you get there. It's like, all right, figure it out. Like, I mean, you do have to figure it out, but you're not going to be completely alone in that process. So make sure that you have flexibility with your courses. And yeah, some things are going to be a little scary at first, adjusting wise, especially when it comes to classes, but just like make sure you know who your advisors are and you'll be fine.
Good points.
My experience was a little bit different. Korea University didn't release their current like class list for the semester I was going into. I think they released it maybe after I arrived in Korea, but you have to have everything prepared before you go and when you apply. I also had to have a required list of 10, but I went out of my way to look at 3 semesters worth of classes that were offered. And I listed out every single one that I could possibly take, because I had heard that Korea University is really competitive to get into classes. And unlike the US, when US classes are filled, professors will be like, well, I have maybe 10 extra seats. I guess I'll let 10 more people in. In Korea, they're like, no, we're full and we're done. Like, we won't let any more in. So I had maybe like a list of 30 to 40 classes alone that I was like, hopefully one of these are offered this coming semester. And I got them all approved and with an equivalent at my school. And I was incredibly grateful that I did that, because not one of the classes I put on my top 10 list were offered or available. And I was luckily not frantic, because I had such an expansive list to pull from that I was able to get the classes I need. And so I say over prepare is a really good thing, because you never know what's going to happen. Maybe 20 out of your list of 30 maybe not there. And it seems daunting, but if you do the work before you leave, you'll feel a lot better when you're faced with that situation. I met people at my university, other exchange students, who didn't do any groundwork and ended up taking 3 courses in Korean, and they didn't even know how to read the alphabet. So it becomes a little bit more stressful if you don't prepare. So just over prepare.
Sorry, with me, I would say it was very streamlined. Like my home university, they'd said I can take literally any class I want. And they also gave me like a credit calculator, which allowed me to convert the US credits to the UK credits to like work out how many classes I need to take and whatnot. But it was really easy to select any classes I wanted to do, and I was just allowed to do them. It's like, for example, I'm doing history classes, even though I'm a game development major.
Awesome. Thank you all. Rory, I'll turn it back to you if you have other questions.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone who answered a question. definitely, you all had amazing questions, and it's just wonderful to hear our panelists have such great insights, and it's just clear all your self-awareness and the reflections you've had from this experience. So with that, I am going to wrap up the panel, and I just want to say another big thank you for everyone who participated and to all of our attendees. If you have questions after this, Rachel, can we throw up the contact slide? We do have our student services officers available to talk with you. Now, I believe all of you have started an ISEP account. If you haven't, that's the first step. And then you will be paired with one of our student services officers who is going to be your resource throughout the entire ISEP experience, from when you begin your application to while you're on program. So these are their faces and their emails addresses too, if you need to reach out to them. And
to clarify, this is for where you want to study, not where you are based now. This is, so if you're interested in the United States, you'd email Gretchen. If you're interested in the United Kingdom, Ireland, or Oceania, you'd email Heather.